The path to success looks more like going through a maze rather than drawing a Picasso squiggle. If you run out of money when you're starting a business, it's probably time to start a new business or get some more money.
So welcome to another episode of the Accelerometer. Today we have Hunter, who's building a company called BitBuilder. They're aiming to help engineers write code.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about BitBuilder, about your journey, about life?
Sure. Thanks for having me. Like you said, I'm building a product called BitBuilder. Our goal is to drive the implementation cost of writing software down to zero. So what we're doing is we're using AI agents to do coding tasks that were typically assigned to humans. The whole idea is to make software more accessible, make products cheaper to build, and make the real thought be the winners rather than the implementation detail.
The thought be the winner. Well, what else is the winner, if not the thought?
Well, they say execution's important, especially when you're building a business, right?
Yeah.
The
I
ability.
don't want execution to be important anymore.
No. We want people to be able to imagine software systems and then look at the code. So we want them to be focused more on design trade-offs and architecture decisions, which product to use, more so than do I know how to code in Ruby on Rails or should I stick to Node.js, even if Ruby on Rails might be the right technology for the tool.
Why do you want people to be focused on design and not the code?
We think that's the more exciting part of building products, and it is, right? The actual writing of the code is, a lot of people do. It's satisfying. It's like doing a problem set for, a student doing a math problem set or something like that. And it can be satisfying those ways. But another way that building products can be satisfying is getting them in the hands of people, getting people using the product, which obviously means you're creating value for them. Yeah. And that's kind of like a higher order thought, right? Like it's a higher order objective in that it benefits more people. It's not an individual pursuit. It's like bringing something into the world, which of course all people have a duty to do. They have a duty to make the world a better place. And so when we're driving the implementation costs down, really what we're doing is allowing people to have their dreams come true or their products get made.
So you want to help people make their dreams come true?
Yeah, we're actually we're philanthropy. No, we're not.
Does it matter what type of dreams?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are some products that people want to build that AI is helping them do, and that might not necessarily be a good thing. My parents are a little older. They're in their early 70s, and they've been getting a lot of AI scams and phone calls, voice calls, things like that. Now we have a code phrase that we use that they give me a ring, and if there's that code phrase in it, they know it's me, and if not, watermelon's a code phrase. Now we got to pick a new one. Then they know it's a scam. And my parents have been the target of these things. Does BitBuilder want to help people build phishing tools that, scam elderly people out of their money? Absolutely not. So no, not every dream is equal.
How do you keep people who want to build these malicious products from using BitBuilder?
We're still figuring that out. I think the industry in general is figuring that out. There's no good answer right now because there's no truthometer or any such technology. We can barely get these language models to generate working code.
Even if they're talking about the truth, you can do some pretty scary stuff with the truth.
Yeah, that's true. We don't want anybody to. We don't want to contribute maliciously. And so if the truth is getting in the way of that, we probably are not interested in helping people do that.
Yeah, then you want to help people write more, right?
Yeah, that's our goal. We want to help people write more. We want to help JavaScript engineers continue this disillusion that they like their programming language and TypeScript is inferior.
That's a good lie, though, right?
Yeah, sure. Codes in Python.
Yeah,
without typing.
When was the last time you coded in JavaScript?
Oh, a long time ago. The only time I did that was when I was doing these data structures and algorithm interview questions, trying to get jobs. This seemed like the de facto language where most of the solutions were based. So I guess that's what I went with. I wouldn't recommend it. And boy, I'm glad we've moved on from that data structures and algorithm paradigm.
That's also kind of like what you were helping people do before. Before this, you were working at another company. What was that company's name, by the way?
Totally. Yeah, that business was called The Practical Interview. Yeah, and when you have a name that long, you get the domain name and you get the .com version of it. So we had the practicalinterview.com.
2 words.
The Practical Interview, yeah.
Do you ever consider dropping the?
No, we took the Ohio State stance on it.
So what was that business's entire shtick?
Well, we were trying to make the interview process for technical candidates more like the job. The whole idea was to level the playing field and give everybody access to the same opportunity, which is a job posting. Unfortunately, we live in a world where the de facto way of interviewing people is to probe their knowledge with a quiz, a toy problem, which is what a data structures and algorithm question really is. We didn't feel like this rewarded maybe working moms or people who are senior engineers and who hadn't looked at cracking the coding interview in 10 years. And those are actually not the skills that a business cares about either. The business cares about the ability to implement features in an existing code base in most scenarios. So we felt like that should be represented in the 45-minute interview.
That's really cool. What happened to it?
Well, it was a catastrophe of its own success, really. The whole idea was that hiring managers could put in the resume of a candidate, and of course we would extract the technologies that the candidate has used in their previous jobs so that we would be able to use them in their interview. And then we would dynamically generate a problem, not a toy problem, something, for example, a backend engineer working in Node.js, they might be given a code base with a Node server and then a Postgres database and then an available Redis instance. And they would say, can you please implement caching in Redis for SQL queries that take longer than X seconds or something like that. And we felt like that was actually adding a business feature. And so that's why we chose that interview scenario. However, to generate that code base, there's actually a lot of code that you have to write from scratch, right? And if you think about it, if you're building this product, you have to do all the combinations of framework A with database B and things like that. And so to solve that problem, we turned to code generation tools. And back then, we had a big if-then statement, which kind of plugged things together and then used some very light machine learning to wire it all up. But I don't know, we started using GPT-3 for that. And we said, holy shit, this stuff is good.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be building toy problems or interview questions. We should be actually fixing problems in production code bases.
So what happened to the users who were using the interview platform?
Well, our design partners slowly fizzled out, and we stopped acquiring more users. So the oxygen stopped coming in, the fire stopped growing eventually. But that's okay. The core code generation algorithms that we built for the practical interview, they power BitBuilder today. We were building agents a long, long time ago. And only recently do we feel like they're competent enough to make meaningful changes in code bases that are non-trivial.
Yeah.
But that's what we're doing with BitBuilder. We're allowing production scale code bases in production code bases.
Yeah.
Changes in production code bases.
How did the pivot feel for you guys?
Well, coincidentally, I had just run out of money. So that makes a pivot very easy, by the way. If you run out of money when you're starting a business, it's probably time to start a new business or get some more money. Yeah. Went back to work. Basically, the change in direction was, it relit a fire that was much needed. When you're stalled at the starting line for about 6 months and you're trying to build a product and it just doesn't quite land with people, and, maybe it's time to reinvent something. And the new direction was awesome because ultimately the market for making changes in code bases is a superset of the market of interviewing people who can make changes in code bases, as it turns out.
So you were able to find more customers.
Able to find more customers, able to get some market pull, also able to be more excited about it as builders, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're somebody who builds, and I'm sure you are, we all are, if you like to build, you want to move quick. You're like, oh, damn, I'm held back by my ability to get things done. Well, tools like BitBuilder allow you to get things done. It's like having a little intern that you can boss around. And then, if you're working on 2 projects, now you get 2 interns and you can have an intern working on this and working on that, and you could oversee them.
What's been the most challenging aspect of building BitBuilder?
The most challenging aspect of building BitBuilder has been actually getting the product working, right? There are code bases out there, I kid you not, with tens of thousands of files, right? That's a lot of stuff to keep in context. And so when we talk about code generation, even though the change is pretty trivial, you have to know where to do it, right? So to some extent, in the very beginning, when we were working with GPT-3, code generation was actually a code search problem. Yeah. It's like that saying about mechanics. You don't pay them for turning the screw, you pay them for knowing which screw to turn, right? Finding the right screw and using search technology to do that, that was our biggest challenge early on.
How did you find the right screw?
A lot of experimentation. I have 3 years of experience building machine learning products at AWS. Well, AWS and Amazon advertising. So big quick inference type of products, big data, a lot of information, a lot of data pipelines go into it, a lot of tools internally to help you build it. And at the end of the day, it comes down to having a really good experimentation pipeline. Can you develop algorithm A, tweak it to make A prime, and then pit them against each other to see which one's better? If you can, that's a pretty robust experimentation framework, and you can build a good machine learning product when you do that. So that's what we did. Prompt tuning, prompt engineering, things like that. Nobody really knows what these language models are doing under the hood with the information. If it might make sense to you and I, it might not make sense to the language model. So making a tune there and switching it and seeing which one works better on the eval set, that's how you make a good machine learning product.
How did you create your experimentation pipeline?
I think I drew on my experience, building these for a Fortune 500 company.
Yeah.
Being able to work on them for my day job and then at 5 p.m. exactly on the dot, 5:01, not a second before, come back and build them for my side project. That allowed me to draw some pretty awesome parallels. I happen to be fortunate enough that I was working on them professionally when I was building it for BitBuilder.
Tell me a little bit about what working on these in the enterprise was like.
Boy, if the saying is knowing which screw to turn is half the battle, like that, yeah, you can definitely come up with a saying there, combining it with knowing like where the needle is.
Sure to pull.
Yeah, which manner to pull, who to like talk to, who to get in the room, especially with a business like Amazon that has a lot of churn, right? Their employees don't stay for very long. And sometimes you're working on a product that, was built 10 years ago. So there's nobody there left to talk to about it. It's not well documented. And so that was a really big challenge doing it in enterprises. Also, in enterprise code bases, tell me if you agree with this. There's a lot of frameworks in place, a lot of pre-existing rules that you have to follow to solve something, right? It's not at all like a startup, right? Those are pretty tedious for human engineers to work around. Some of them serve the enterprise great, right? Like maybe security rules. For example, you need a pre-prod environment before you deploy to prod. Well, that sounds like a good idea. But then there are other really silly rules, like you have to use our web framework for doing your HTTP calls. Then you have to use that team's web framework for doing WebSocket streaming. So like these rules, they artificially constrain the problem, and it can make it really taxing for human engineers to work in this enterprise. I noticed this at Capital One too when I was there. But both these companies are, pretty tech companies, pretty fair established. Luckily, the world that we're trending towards, where AI agents make a lot of the code changes that we're describing here, those constraints, they constrain the problem for the AI agent. The agent itself actually does better in those situations because it has to assume less. The path to success looks more like going through a maze rather than drawing a Picasso squiggle and then ending up at a corner. And yeah, the Picasso squiggle could do anything you want, but the maze is actually what provides a business value because the team can't accept the solution if it doesn't, follow the same rules that a human solution would.
So tell me about the harshest piece of criticism that you got while at Capital One.
This is the harshest piece of criticism I've gotten my entire career. 7 years ago, somebody once told me that I should find a way to communicate that masks my underlying arrogance.
What does that even mean?
It means that people graduate college and they need some feedback. That's the first thing it means.
Does it mean that you're arrogant or just like you sound arrogant?
It meant a little bit of both. And I think in my first 3 years of my professional career, I went through a lot of personal changes about how I was as a collaborator. And honestly, that was something I needed to hear to grow personally, right? And of course, that transition to professional growth as well.
I feel like that piece of advice is also really interesting because it's not telling you to be less arrogant. They're like, be more arrogant, but, bullshit your way.
I took it as in I should hide it better. But it was pretty rich coming from a certain person too. This person had a communication style that I thought was like, step on toes, push you around, kind of type A, forward, Bridgewater, AWS culture. But I need to hear it. And I think a lot of people graduate college with an idea of thinking like they're the best, they know what's going on. And sometimes you need to be taken down a step, and that's okay. That's part of professional life, right? It's important to grow.
So how did you mask your communication style?
I don't know so much as if it was the mask. Like I said, they asked me to hide it, but I think actually what I got at the end of the day is, oh, I don't want to have to hide it. I don't want to be an asshole. I want to be a kind person that people want to work with. And I was really lucky to have mentors when I was at Capital One that, led with empathy and they didn't boss and bully. So I think that having people to work towards and then being told, hey, you're kind of going down the wrong path is a powerful combination.
Do you think about that advice a lot while founding a company?
I do, but maybe it's second and third order thoughts, right? I don't think about that exact quote, but I'm sure there are thoughts I have today that became because of that feedback, leading with empathy and helping people, getting the entire team to rise together is an important part of being a leader, and especially getting people behind your cause or willing to share time with you, whether that's for a 30-minute interview or years in their professional career. And all that came from a little bit of a slap in the face wake-up call, which is okay. That's okay to have.
So what are some first order thoughts that you're having every day?
Why is everything on fire? Is this fire hot enough to burn me? And oh boy, this sucks. We have a demo to ship. We're going to have to get something together here.
What's currently on fire for you guys?
We have a lot of users. We really do. We're installed in 7.4 thousand GitHub repositories. It's a lot. Unfortunately, we can do barely anything for those users. We don't have a very competent model right now. And frankly, I do think we're pushing the boundaries of what our industry is using for code generation. But we are, not much better than bug fixes, correcting typos. Adding a button to UI was an accomplishment that we celebrated last week. I kid you not. It was a full stack feature technically because we updated a database as well.
How do you that's a lot of users, a lot of repositories. What do you think was the thing that really clicked for you that got you into so many users, so many repositories?
Actually, I'm not sure it's anything we did. I think it was a bit of a pull. People who build things want to be able to build things faster.
Yeah.
Tools like this allow them to.
And you just put it out onto the internet. It was just there, and then...
There is one thing we did. We said that we're going to turn you into a 10x engineer. That's a lie. We turn you into a 10.01x engineer. No, 1.01x engineer.
A 1.0x.
Yeah.
So you kept the engineers the same quality.
Just about, yeah. But if you squint your eyes, you can see an improvement.
How do you measure that?
We're still trying to figure that out, People use our products and they're like, oh, this is so cool, but I would never use it at work because the work systems are so complex. And if they give you that feedback, which we get quite often, it means that what we're building is a toy and it's not actually good enough for the world. So we're not actually increasing their productivity. So fortunately, we only really have subjective ways to measure it right now. We have our eval sets, but those might not depict changes in the real world or real business code changes that they need to make.
I mean, this has been a major problem in software engineering for years, measuring software engineer productivity. What do you tell engineering managers when you're trying to convince engineering managers to use something like this?
Well, our first pitch was to give them for the cost of a single intern, give everybody on their team a virtual intern. Yeah. And that's cute and it resonates well. And then we can follow it up with a 10x engineer bumper sticker, maybe send them an email from some cool.ai domain. But at the end of the day, they had to be builders to see the value in it. And they had to be good enough builders to be able to multitask because that's where our product really shines, right? It does actually asynchronous code generation, not synchronous code generation.
What's the difference between synchronous and asynchronous code generation?
Oh, I think of synchronous as a 2x improvement on engineers' capabilities, whereas asynchronous is closer to a 10x improvement. Maybe the 2x improvement allows their fingers to move quicker.
Asynchronous being it's in the background, it's improving your code while you are improving your code.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You have to wait for it and ask it
unguided code generation. So GitHub Copilot today is an awesome example of synchronous code suggestions, right? But with BitBuilder, hopefully we're building something that allows human developers to task a BitBuilder instance to make some improvement and then go off and do something else and then come back and witness the results. So that's why we see it as background asynchronous code generation.
How does your system know what to do?
Today, engineers have to prescribe it.
So you tell it, you're like, I want you to fix this bug.
Totally.
And it goes out and it fixes that bug.
We talked about our dream and the mission of making products more accessible. Anybody can dream something and it can be a reality.
And what level of detail do I have to be? how do I describe the bug? What if I'm just like, there's a bug somewhere in the code, please fix it? Will it go out and just find bugs in the code and fix them?
No. This is a dev tool.
Yeah.
Today, we're happy to get the product solving bugs and following instructions to do it. In the future, of course, we want to move towards a world where product managers can say, hey, this button doesn't have a dark mode. I want it to have a dark mode. And oh, by the way, make the text purple. Things like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Then maybe we want to get to a world where engineering managers can say, we need this to connect to this API and write a row here in this table. Things like that are all cool. But in order to do that, you have to be able to solve really specific instructions. And the only people who provide that, the people who would be writing the code themselves.
So can you give me an example of something that somebody would say right now to your system?
Sure. So a lot of people are using our system to do work that they don't want to do, which is fair, right? So if they are a backend engineer, they use it to generate React components.
So like, you're just like, generate me a React component for a blue button.
For a blue button, you can take it a step further right now. We do have some competency on the front end. So you could say, build me a page in my single page web app. So manage the state to do it. That is a dashboard. And then the top left, we should have this metric, which comes from this row in the database. In the top right, we should open a WebSocket to listen to these events to get this moving average and render it here. Yeah. So maybe that's on the more complex side of what we can do today, but we're quickly getting there. And so as a result, you can almost think like a product engineer, right? Like rather than in a back-end or a front-end engineer to make this change, you can say, what does the user want to see here? And what do I have to do to get there?
What worries you most about your engineering stack?
Well, we don't have any unit tests.
Do you feel like you need unit tests?
No, we have some integration tests, which is a big win. Yeah. Thank you, Nick. Our engineering stack today, it's getting expensive. Developers use GPT-4. They sit down with our product, 30-minute working session, and they can rack up a $200 bill because the cost of the inference calls, especially for GPT-4 32K, very expensive quickly. Yeah. So operationally, that's something that worries me. Our actual dev stack, we love Supabase. We have a lot of fun with that product. We think it handles so many cool things like authentication. We store our embeddings in it. We obviously store its Postgres functionality. So we really like that. But Supabase doesn't have a great local developer experience, right? You have to Docker compose up a bunch of containers. This is pretty much a headache in combination with our front end, which is a heavyweight Next.js app. You actually need 16 gigabytes of RAM to actually run our product locally, and it's predominantly a back-end system. And so I had to go get a new laptop, which means everybody I hire needs to go get not the cheapest laptop. Yeah. That worries me.
What excites you about the future of AI?
I think we're trending towards a world where human engineers are more like task managers.
Yeah.
Today, people
like, the Microsoft Task Manager.
Yeah. They have a bunch of RAM.
Yeah.
And they get upgrades in the middle of the night. Yeah. And if they don't like you, they'll give you a blue screen.
Yeah.
No, we're headed towards a place where human developers have a bunch of tools at their disposal, and they're going to be measured on their ability to compose really complex systems using those tools. And so, maybe picking an AWS technology and pairing it with a certain JavaScript framework to build their, front end, and then selecting a back-end database service. Things like that are more exciting to me than, did you know that error handling in Golang has really improved in the past couple of years? Honestly, I don't really care about the error handling in Golang, though I'm sure Golang is awesome, and there's a bunch of people who do, and I like Kubernetes. But it seems more exciting to me when people can think about the product more rather than the tools they're using to build the product. Because at the end of the day, the technology that we're using to deliver value for somebody is not the most exciting thing. It's only exciting to us, the technologists, right? And so in the future, when we can kind of think less about the individual technology because we're assigning a lot of the implementation details to agents or code generation or however it looks in the future, that's exciting to me because then we can move quicker and about the important things.
I like this thought about how in the future we're going to be judged based on our ability to handle the composability of the all of the new tools being generated. I think right now we're in a really interesting time where literally there's a new tool every 5 minutes. There's something else that you have to be, I can't keep up. I did a PhD where in my work, like in the first year, there were like 500 citations. My advisor was like, read every citations. So I did. And that was easy compared to like the world that's happening right now with all the new tools. How do your systems handle that? Like if some engineering managers like, now we need to include this new library that just came out 10 minutes ago in our systems. How does BitBuilder handle something like that?
Oh, we can't handle this today. We basically act on the world when the training data for GPT-4 ended. Yeah. And that's okay because the problems that you're describing, I think they are solvable. And I think the real-time exploration and ingestion of data is a solvable problem. But honestly, we're just trying to scope down the problem as much as possible today. We're trying to make it as simple as possible. We do have a demo, and we do have some tools in our agent toolkit that allow them to go on the internet and reference documentation. But honestly, this is kind of a half-baked solution, and it causes more headaches than it does solutions. It causes more problems. And that's because when you're working in code generation, you have this additional dimensionality of the information that you're exploring that not other data sources typically have. And that dimensionality is the version of the code. For example, there's a popular front-end library out there. It's open source. It's called Mantine, mantine.dev. And it's awesome. It's got a bunch of React components. Each component has a bunch of properties that you can use to do cool things without having to code it up yourself. If you use the wrong version of Mantine, if you browse to the wrong version to reference the documentation, you're going to be very confused. And the versions, they change the signature somewhat. And as a result, our agents have the same problem if they go to the latest version and a customer is using, not the latest version.
In the future, how do you think that you're going to address these types of problems?
I'm not sure. Honestly, I would love to see somebody else solve this. I think there's a business out there for it. Yeah, seriously, pawn it off. You know who's doing a really good job with it? And they have a competitor to BitBuilder. They have a product called Cody. This is SourceGraph. SourceGraph is trying to basically map code in a way that makes sense to humans, not just to versions. And I think that's pretty awesome, right? Their code search functionality seems miles above GitHub's internal code search functionality. And so if there was an API out there to pass my requirements.txt or my package.json to and get like a list of all of the versions and their documentation and be able to search that documentation from each version, that's a pretty cool product. But if you're building a code generation tool, you don't want to have to tackle that. And oh, by the way, you also have to tackle executing the generated code. And oh, by the way, you also have to tackle all the integrations with all the various frameworks and repositories and code bases. So no, you would, if you're building the product that I am, you would want to like have other people solve these things.
So what's your plan to compete with Cody?
Cody's an awesome product. It's really cool. It's answers questions. It can fix to-dos, but it has recipes, and that's how it makes its code changes. So it's scoped, and its changes are pretty prescribed. BitBuilder operates more like a human developer in that it can reference your product roadmap, your production logs, things like this. And so we're not like trying to compete with Cody per se, because Cody is speeding up human developers. We're trying to like offload some of the human developers' work to BitBuilder. So we're not, we want humans to use Cody when they're writing code, or GitHub Copilot or Tab9 or whatever you choose to use. And then when they're not writing code, we want BitBuilder in the background to be making the changes.
What is something that has given you pause over the last year while building this, has made you thought like this might not actually be possible?
There's the obvious technology hurdles, right?
Yeah.
If you can struggle for a month to get an agent to write valid syntax for TypeScript to build a button to update a database, like that's a lot of work for something that would take a human engineer 5 minutes. But aside from that, there's a lot of people doing this out there, right? There's a lot of builders in the world, and a lot of them are really freaking smart, man. They got some cool demos out there. People have been able to wire GPT-4 up to their local code bases, to their GitHub repositories to solve issues and add labels to issues. People are doing a bunch of different stuff. They've built entire new IDEs around these agents, like Cursor.so is reinventing how people use the IDE, reimagine the IDE. Honestly, the competition is giving me a little pause. Yeah. A lot of smart people.
You guys from building an IDE around it?
We're trying to offload some of those problems, right? Yeah. So we think that we want to start really narrow. We want to pick a small pond and be the biggest fish in. So instead of trying to build our IDE ourselves, we are partnering or integrating with cloud service providers,
CDEs.
Yes, CDEs, the most important word that's been on my mind for a long, long time, cloud development environments. By partnering with CDEs,
Do cloud service providers have CDEs?
they do. AWS has Cloud9. GCP invested a lot of money in Replit.
Yeah.
Yeah, things like this. Anyways, these environments are awesome if you are building a code generation agent because they give your agent a runtime, right? It can execute the generated code. You can build this pipeline of execute the code, it failed the unit test, fix the unit test, fix the code, execute the code. Okay, now move on to the next step.
So you guys are using GPT-4, right?
Oh, yeah.
Do you guys want to train your own model?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, we want to train our own model.
Why is that?
There's a bunch of information out there that didn't make it into the popular training sets, right? Yeah. It's no secret that when you put code into the corpus, the model performance improves on things that are not code, right? Like we have GPT-4 being able to pass things like the bar and SAT questions, do well on those, right? Makes a lot of sense because code is logic, right? Well, we think there's another data set out there that's incredibly underutilized, and it's all the feedback that developers leave on each other's pull requests. A senior developer leaving feedback on a junior's pull request is really valuable. A, because it's natural language feedback. Hey, update this class, it needs to be a private method. Or hey, rename this in this way. Or hey, you missed a Java doc, things like that. But B, it shows what code was proposed and then what changes need to be made to have it be accepted. Yeah. And so if you can make a catalog of all the changes that people want basically to see in their production code, you can see a bunch of different versions of the production code, the changes need to go through, and you can write better production code. At least that's the hypothesis for now. So yeah, we would love to train a text-to-code model that used historical pull requests, feature roadmaps, product roadmaps, prod logs, and then resulted in a code change.
Have you trained models before from scratch?
No, I fall into this group of people that I've noticed is growing quite a bit that is very good at making API calls to very big servers. But I don't know how to train these models. And I think that's okay now. I think we're kind of coming down to a world where, a bit like the smartphone, people don't need to know how it operates. They just need to know that it can go to the App Store and get Instagram or things like that, right? They don't need to know how the command line works to use Mac OS to have their photos and send them to their grandma. So I think we're kind of seeing that these days in the software engineering world. And there's this conference going on. Have you heard of AI Engineer?
No, I haven't heard of that.
You know this one? Oh, yeah. It's by a small AI guy. And they got AutoGPT there and Harrison Chase and Paul Copperstone, CEO of Supabase. People like that are at this conference. And the entire conference is called AI Engineer because there's this term out there. People are starting to use AI Engineer. Not an ML engineer, not a language model engineer, no training the models, but putting them in products.
So I should get, an AI engineer job ad.
Yeah. We saw prompt engineer. So now let's see the inflated salaries for AI engineer.
Yeah.
Did you see that New York has people posting the salaries in the job ad now?
I did. I have to do that.
Really?
Yeah. I think my range is $1 to $10 million.
I checked this morning. Yeah. For one of your senior positions, it's 60 to 800K.
Yeah. The maximum range.
Yeah. This is a job interview. I'm applying. Yeah. Not for 60.
What got you into startups in the first place?
My dad asked me this recently. I have no good answer. He said, where did all this ambition, this conviction come from? Not in a bad way. He said it in a positive way. He's like, what happened here? And I said, I have no idea. I think my bus went through a certain neighborhood when I was a kid, and the houses were very nice in that neighborhood. And then I found Zillow, maybe. Maybe that's what happened. I don't think so. Maybe I just wanted to make the world a better place. I don't know. I subscribe to long-termism. Yeah. You know what that is?
Yeah, I've been to their bar in San Francisco.
They have a bar?
Yeah, the long-termism bar. Oh. It's the Long Nail Foundation's bar.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I like bars and I like long-termism.
They have a bunch of vials on the ceiling of alcohols that people buy. They buy an alcohol, they donate to the bar, and the bar will keep that alcohol around for the next 10,000 years for them to drink, presumably, after they've been cryopreserved or whatever. And the vials just all look like pee.
Gross.
Yeah, it's like lots of vials of pee on the ceiling. It's kind of hilarious. But it's a cool bar.
I like long-termism. I think there's something to be said about the obligation to improve the human living condition, because you and I, everybody alive today, we benefited from it, right?
Yeah.
Like, unfortunately, there's wars and there is malnutrition in places, and the world is not obviously a happy place everywhere. But by and large, these days are much better than the previous days. And therefore, I have an obligation to make the next couple days better.
So that's why I want to be a founder.
I think so. I think that's a good enough motivation. I think increasing the world GDP is another way to say that.
Yeah.
Put that on my YC app. Let's see how that goes.
So you're applying to YC right now?
Yes, BitBuilder's applying the next cohort. We have an awesome sponsor that I don't think I'm allowed to mention by name, but he was heavily involved in the GitHub Copilot project.
That's awesome.
We're excited about it. We think YC is a good program. We think that the connections that come out of it are invaluable. And we think it's a good launching platform for people with big ideas.
Is this your first time applying?
This is my first time applying, yeah.
Oh, that's really exciting.
My second business, first time applying.
I don't even remember my first time applying.
What did it feel like?
I have no idea.
Think.
So this was actually my 9th time applying.
Oh, God.
Yeah. I failed to get in a lot.
That's okay.
Yeah. Actually, I think the first time I applied was 2012. And yeah, I didn't even stick around in the company long enough to see if we got into the program or not.
You're in the arena, as they say.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Somebody who's been trying it for as long as you have makes sense, right? Like, makes sense that they want people like that, as is evidenced by them accepting you.
Yeah, there's a fun story that I'm not going to go into because it'll be my third time going into it on the podcast. But yeah, they seem to want people who are determined.
Do you remember what your, how did you hack something that's not a computer program answer?
Oh, I don't even know what my answer was this time. I hate that question because that question, it like puts me on the spot. Like, I know that I hack a lot of things all the time, but the second I'm like, what did I hack? Just nothing that I've done is good enough. Or just like suddenly like have like hacker, like imposter syndrome.
In other words, the things that I would answer with this, I can't answer with this on air.
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh, I had a friend who was telling me about how like he hacked the BART system by like only buying like local tickets, and that was somehow cheaper. But you know, because he was always in a locale, like that was like, yeah, that's a reasonable answer. Like, it's definitely like at the level of any of the hacks that I've done. But I'm not going to talk about the hacks that I've done because like they're not good enough because I made them. I can imagine that, you know, you feel similar way about every one of the hacks. Like every day you're out there hacking. Seriously,
if you're starting a business, you're not a hack, but you are hacking.
Yeah.
And hacking is good. Hacking is a good thing for the world. Somebody I know had a really good answer, and they said they used their dad's name to take classes at a college because they were too young. That's a cool hack.
If I was applying to Y Combinator today, I think a hack that I would use is what I've been doing recently on LinkedIn, which I noticed that in the first like day of posting a job post on LinkedIn, you get like 10 times the number of visitors that you get any other day, or the number of applicants that you get like the second day, but it's $6 a day either way. So now what I'm doing is every day I just end and start a new job post. Of course, it's not great for my like consistency with my CSV files, but you know, I'm getting 10 times the number of applicants that you're supposed to be getting on LinkedIn job posting. Fun story.
Is that your metric, number of applicants? What about quality of applicants?
Number is really important for us at the moment because, like, I don't care about somebody's resume. We're running this really interesting interview process where if people like submit bounties and do pull requests that are good, I'm going to interview them regardless of their resume, their background, or anything like that. So, like, we've had some really interesting people come through. Like, there was a kid who was 14 years old.
Oh my gosh!
Like, he was doing research on the side at MIT, and he started like submitting pull requests, which is awesome.
So you would hire people with non-traditional backgrounds, and you sounds like you lean into that, right?
Yeah, I love that.
Nice.
Like, I don't care what your background is. I care if you're writing code.
And you yourself have a PhD.
Yeah.
Boy, do you think most PhD holders kind of have a preference for traditional backgrounds?
I don't think there's consensus among PhD holders on literally anything. I think PhD holders are some of the most opinionated and unusual group of people out there.
I'm sure that means somebody agrees with me then.
Yeah, definitely. There are definitely some PhD holders who are like, I'm only going to hire you if you have a PhD. And some days I'm like that too. Like some days I'm like, well, this guy doesn't have a PhD. Like, are they really good? But like, I have to slap myself and be like, no. You know that's not true. You know that there are people with crazy backgrounds.
I almost got a physics PhD. I was applying to grad school. Oh yeah. I got into one. I was going through the whole process, took GRE, got a letter of recommendations, did a bunch of research as an undergrad. I cannot think of a worse way to like start my career, honestly. I'm so happy in hindsight that I didn't do it. Yeah.
You know, I started the PhD, like in part, I was curious about being a professor. In part, I wanted to build a startup. And I'm not unhappy that I did a PhD, but it was so much less useful to building a startup than I thought it would be.
And are you based out of New York or sir?
And you live in New York.
I live in New York. I've been here for 5 years. Boy, it's been interesting hearing people talk about New York and SF and kind of the back and forth of where next generation of startups are going to be. People say there's a lot of seed money and pre-seed rounds going on the East Coast, but of course the West Coast has all the incubators, hacker houses. I've been enjoying that conversation. I've been partaking in it all.
You haven't been partaking?
No.
You're partaking right now.
No. I'm just, accelerant gas on the fire. I'm just sitting back here and watching. I like SF. I love New York. I think it's important to be close to your customers, so maybe I'd take a stance on New York.
But have you been out in Cerebral Valley recently?
No.
Apparently, Hayes Valley, the Lower Haight and Hayes Valley have become the epicenter of AI startups, rebranded as Cerebral Valley.
I would not trade the weird people of New York for anything else. I think they keep me grounded.
You want to trade the weird people of New York for the weird people of San Francisco?
Yeah, because they're all weird in the same way. Okay, maybe I am taking a stance.
It sounds a little bit like a stance.
I just want to appear unopinionated, but let me tell you how I really think.
I feel like we're a very New York-centric podcast at the moment.
I can imagine why. I can guess why.
Yeah, even out in San Francisco, I went out into the woods in Mendocino with a bunch of founders from Silicon Valley. Lots of people were very bullish on New York.
Cool. Yeah. Would you say there's more anarchists, East or West Coast?
I'd say they're anarchists wherever I go and they get on my podcast. And the second you're on my podcast, you're an anarchist.
Nice.
The second you're in my Discord, you're an anarchist.
That's a cool title.
Yeah. It is fun to have an adjective, a denominizable name. I guess you could be a bit builderizer.
For the love of God, no. We're not doing that.
I mean, you would just be a bit builder, like as a user of Bit Builder.
Yeah. We actually had some fun time thinking about what we were going to name our GitHub bots profile. Because people do like, yeah, exactly. We were coming up with a whole bunch of fun ones. People do like XYZ product agent or XYZ AI or XYZ tool, things like that. We wanted to go totally left field. We wanted to pull something out of like your old car. That was one of them on the list. Your old car tagged you in a pull request.
Oh, I love that.
Why not?
What is it currently?
Oh, we decided not to do that. We kind of shifted the product a little bit entirely. Okay. But that's one thing I do regret that we didn't go down that path.
Does the product talk to you when you use the product?
No, not in English. It just writes some bad code back at you. It tags you. And then GitHub sends you an email. It can ask follow-up questions. So if you don't provide enough specific instructions, but we don't think the idea of talking to your robots, I said robots, not anything else, is a good idea. Yeah, they're not. I'm not sure you want to talk to our robot. Yeah, I think you can be better.
Anything interesting to say?
Nope, go listen to a podcast. Don't talk to BitBuilder.
Why not?
It's not competent. It's not coherent. It had a real argument one time. So what you can do when you use the product, it writes you a pull request, right? And then you can leave a comment on it, and you can ask it to change it.
Yeah.
I wanted it to use Lodash, this JavaScript library for like mutation, things like that, because I'm not a JavaScript guy. I don't know any of the built-in methods. Anyways, I'm like, use Lodash. And he's like, no. I'm going to use this other obscure library. Oh, no. I'm going to write this from scratch. Oh, no. That method's not implemented for this data structure, so I can't do it this way. And it's not actually saying these responses, of course, but in the code it spits back at me, it's doing everything but Lodash.
Oh, my God. So you just got mad at it and you told it you were mad at it.
Yeah, and there's nothing as satisfying as closing an open pull request proposed by a subordinate bot. Will not fix. Not implementing.
Did the bot actually like create the will not fix tag?
No. That was me responding to it. that was me taking the upper hand.
The next state of your bot.
Yeah, we're actually building a moderator for open source repositories. Closed won't fix.
That's a great idea.
The world does not need more of those. Next, we'll be suggesting a Stack Overflow.
We've had a lot of trouble finding good moderators for open source repositories. I mean, I do it still.
What would the eval set for such a system look like?
Oh, I have no idea. I think you just go and you record repositories, getting like tags on them. I think only GitHub could do this.
Only GitHub has the data for this. Maybe Stack Overflow or something like that. Yeah, what is a moat? Why is a moat? Why do people talk about it?
I think it is a body of water surrounding a castle.
Yeah, and it has nothing to do in the founder world. It has nothing to do in the venture capital world because we're all just out here trying to do something. And the fact that you have a strategic play or personal clout or you're really good at something.
Personal clout. That could be your moat.
I'm very humble.
Really respect me.
Yeah. Seriously though, it's almost laughable when people are like, "Oh, okay, but like, what's your moat? What's your competitive advantage?" Like, try to make it work here. We're barely staying alive.
So the moral of the story is we don't have any moats.
No moats, no castles.
Apollo is the only company with a moat. So I guess as your final words, what would you like to say to your podcast audience?
Keep building fun things. Don't get discouraged when someone else is building something. It's okay if you don't have it figured out. If somebody gives you feedback early in your career, listen to it. If somebody gives you feedback later in your career, listen to it. Basically, just go build something cool. There's no reason not to be. It's so easy to teach yourself to code, to use a new library, there's a lot of resources out there for these type of things. And if you start having fun and thinking about it, like, why not keep doing that, right? And like, maybe you can make a career out of it. Hopefully you can if you're listening to this. But there's no reason not to be doing what you like. And if you don't like what you're doing, the converse, right? If you're a quant on Wall Street and you don't like what you're doing, go find a startup. Do something cool that you want to. Life's too short to hate a job you don't like.
I love that. Well, thank you for coming on the Accelerometer, Hunter.
Thank you very much.
Great having you.